Hello, everyone. Welcome into episode 159 of the Stomp the Bus show, and this is going to be all basketball. No NFL draft talk, no baseball talk, uh, no other sports talk. This is all about ASU basketball and Bobby Hurley, the era ending. I was about to say ASU basketball firing Bobby Hurley, but they just simply let his contract run out. I think he's going to still be paid by the school up until June. And you know what? I'm kind of okay with it ending exactly this way. And I think I think this is close to as amicable of a breakup that you can find in major college sports. Excuse me. Bobby Hurley didn't seem particularly upset. The school gave him a thank you on the way out, which for a coach who made 3 tournament appearances, I'll count 4 because it's really 4, not counting the 2020 tournament that was canceled. 3 tournament appearances in 11 years, 4 if you count I'll just say 4. 4 tournament appearances, 11 years. And Hurley thanking them. I think everyone kind of knows the situation. This team that they had this year had some flashes, was competent. Again, they even after the horrible loss against Iowa State in the Big 12 tournament, they're a competent team. They finished the year, they're 17-16 to end the year. And look, I mean, we've said it on this show. Had they beaten Oregon State, beaten one of the games against Colorado and didn't lose one of the other games where they had a big lead slip away, whether it be UCF or Baylor on the road, then they would have 20 wins right now. Even if they lose the way they did, they would be a tournament team. This team was not far away from being a tournament team. I think we saw and again, aside from the early stretch of conference play, which was really bad, and they kind of got screwed with how the schedule lined up, but it is what it is. And some other low points in Big 12 play. This was a competent, watchable, and at times enjoyable team. They gave us some high highs, like the win over Texas in the Maui Invitational, win over Oklahoma and Phoenix, and then beating Texas Tech and then Kansas in the end of the year. That's a good, for considering it's a limited talent pool overall. It's a low NIL budget compared to the contenders in the league. This was better than we thought it was going to be. It was certainly better than the last 2 years, which were abject disasters by the end of the year. I mean, the end of the year last year was a complete disaster. And Hurley, probably the reason why he's not that upset is he probably knows that at other schools or almost every other major or high major power basketball program, he would have gotten fired last year. That's just how it would have gone. But he didn't. And I think it kind of worked out that he didn't. I don't know who the coach was. We had to get this coach last year. No. And I'll get into it with the coaching search. I think there's one name that is kind of the most obvious choice right now. But we'll see how it plays out. There are some unique candidates to ASU that are interesting, and then there are some guys that are being floated out there that I just don't really think. I think it's worth mentioning, I guess, but I don't really think that they're gonna pick here. So all of that. Before I dive into more of Hurley's tenure and everything, please like and subscribe, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. I guess we've talked about, if you followed ASU basketball this year, you knew that this was going to happen. It was going to end this way. And additionally, you knew it would have taken, I don't know what it would have taken to actually for him to keep his job. I think I've heard some people say, they would have needed to have a run in the tournament or clearly make, I'm I don't know, man. I think if they had just made the tournament, he would continue. And I think at that point I would have supported it because that's to me the expectation at ASU given the current situation of the program. I know a lot of fans don't like hearing that. I don't think that like, oh, Bobby Hurley's never won. Like, I think just you get to the tournament, and even if you're a bubble team, like that's fine. That is fine. That means you're doing enough at ASU. But not everyone agrees with that. Overall, I'd say the Hurley era, I'd give it a B. I don't think you can just say it was a smashing success because that's just not true. But it also was not a complete failure. It wasn't. I mean, you can argue that he is the second best coach in ASU men's basketball history. I think that's a very cogent and clear argument you can make behind Ned Wolk. You could also say that Herb Sendek was better at Bobby Hurley's three. I think that Herb and Bobby are like very neck and neck. I was thinking about this. Like Herb has the James Harden era and the success that came with that, and that does weigh a lot. Like it's pretty cool that we have James Harden as one of like the ambassador of our program. He loves ASU. He still supports ASU. Like he goes to games when he's in town. That is so cool to have for a program of ASU's stature, right? Think of like one job that Hurley was kind of linked to in one of these articles I'm going to share was Boston College. Similar type of school as ASU in terms of men's basketball, right? Like it's in a large media market. There's other pro sports teams there. There's no real tradition, like all this stuff. They don't have a James Harden. We have a James Harden. Colorado, same thing. Like a lot of these kind of very low end. Wazoo is kind of in the same boat as us. Now they're in the Pac-12 now, and it's a lower end, but like they having Klay Thompson is very similar to ASU having James Harden, where it's these two low end Power 5 basketball programs. I'll count Wazoo and Power 5 for this. Like, and they got so and so. Like they got one of these really awesome like slam dunk Hall of Fame basketball players, and it went to their school. Like it's just a really cool thing to have, and that factors into Herb Sendek's evaluation as whether he's better than Bobby. But like to tie it back to Bobby, like I would say the tenure was a success. It was not a smashing success. It wasn't a success all the time. But like, look, I agree with the decision to move on from Bobby, but like there is no probability or expectation that the next coach is going to be better. Honestly, like I think every reasonable ASU fan who is supportive of the decision to move on from Hurley and not extend his contract, we know the risk, right? Like we know that it could be worse than Hurley. It could be. Now, it's very similar to like the Cardinals moving off of Kyler. It's that, sure, it could be worse, but what's like the point of keeping him is not, that's not like a great argument either, you know, like being like, oh, well, we can just be kind of average. Like, okay, like at that point, just try something new and hope it works out. And that's where I'm at with the next coaching hire at ASU. Like, let's just try something new, get an up and comer, and hope something works out. Obviously, the NIL requirements not requirements, but like backing or potential NIL backing would make a huge deal in this. But when you look back at Hurley's tenure, like it is important to remember how kind of juiced up the fan base was about the basketball program. I'd say in the late 2010s, right? So my senior year of college was when it was they got to number 3 in the country. And then a lot of people just like a lot of the kind of Hurley homers on social media, which I'm not going to name names, but there was a little bit too much like celebration and too much. There were some tweets out there that were like, oh, like you guys don't like, we don't know what we're missing out on type of thing. And like, remember when we were number 3 in the country? And it's like, well, you have to tell the whole story about being number 3 in the country, right? Because it was awesome to start the year undefeated and be number 3 in the country. It was not awesome watching that team absolutely disintegrate in conference play and sneak into the tournament as a first 14. Okay? That was not awesome. And we were a committee decision away from that being a punchline of being, oh, we were number 3 in the country, to being, oh my gosh, we were number 3 in the country and we didn't even make the tournament. Like, let's just remember that, okay? As like, and it kind of happened the next year. Both years you beat Kansas, right? Awesome. Incredible. Like, nothing to take away from that. You still barely made the tournament both times. And so these are things that you can't just shoo away in the analysis of Hurley. And then the 1920 year happens with Dort and Cheatham. I think Rob Edwards was on that team. That was a really good team. That's the best team he had at ASU. And he gets screwed by the pandemic. Let's just be real. Like, screwed by the pandemic. The next 2 years were an absolute disaster. You know, and the 2023 season, like, that was a really good bounce back. And he hit the portal correctly. The Cambridge brothers, Warren Washington. That was a good team. Jemiah Neal. Unfortunately, the transfer portal stuff set in, and all those guys left or went to the professional, and then it's just, oh, okay. And then the next 2 years weren't good. And then you have this year where it's like, oh, okay, like, yeah, we have a winning season. We're not terrible, but it felt, once you really got into the meat of conference play, it's like, yeah, we're not going to make the tournament. And this ASU team, they needed to win all the games. If they were playing a team that was like clearly worse than them, they had to win that game. There was no, and that's why the Oregon State loss is brutal. That's why getting swept by Colorado is brutal. That's why losing to Baylor on the road, that game they lost, and then you could throw the UCF win in there because they played so well for that game, and then they lose. Like, the West Virginia game at home, like, you can't stack those up. You can have a few of those, but you can't stack those up, and that's why the year's over. And so I do think that, like, it's okay to correctly point out that, like, the Hurley era was a success, but it was not an A+ success. It was a B, probably closer to B-, right? And a lot of the reason why he was at ASU for so long is because of the modest expectations of the fan base, which are earned, right? And at the time when, like, like a few years ago, when it was like, hey, we should fire this guy, like, the athletic department was so wrapped up in football with conference realignment, with the fallout of the Herm Edwards and all the NCAA scandals and the self-imposed bowl ban and having, like, the fan base was out, all this, like, it kind of allowed Hurley to be off to the side. And it's like, yeah, we're not going to spend extra money to fire this guy. And then in 2023, and when a lot of that is, like, really in motion, or at least still kind of not in motion, but still relevant, right? That was before they did the self-imposed bowl ban. He has a winning year, and that was a very well-timed good season for Hurley, because that kept him around a few more years. Because it's like, oh, okay, like, because even the next year after, well, it's like, well, he made the tournament the year before, you know, and then in the 2025 season, it was like, well, we allocated so much money to football, like, we probably shouldn't spend the money to fire Hurley. And so it's like all these kind of secondary things that, like, the reason he was able to stay in the job for so long, despite a decent tenure, but not like or awful or you know, not just very kind of down the middle, is because there was so much attention, whether it be positive or negative, focused on football. And so that's part of the reason why ASU basketball has been historically bad. And that's why he was able to stay so long. Like, that's part of the job. That's part of, like, that's baked into the expectations for this job. So I will miss the care that Hurley had for the university. I do not think, like, this guy's authentic. You can tell, like, he's not a liar. I don't think he has it really in him to lie, for better or worse. And I do think he genuinely loves ASU. It's been, like, people have said, like, he really likes being the underdog, and, like, if you're the head coach of ASU men's basketball, you are the underdog. Like, maybe he wasn't the underdog before when he was at Duke or in the NBA or whatever. Like, he's well known as, like, his great, like, accomplishments, but, like, whoever the next coach is, like, you're an underdog now. Maybe you weren't an underdog before, but you are now if you're the head coach of ASU men's basketball. And so I think he fed into that. I think he just really liked the region. And I think, like, again, like, I think while there were so many difficulties that come with this job, like he got to live in one place for 11 years as a coach. That's pretty rare. That's pretty rare. And he was able, like, I think he saw his kids go to high school and college here. That's like in the coaching world, especially again, if you do not have like some Hall of Fame level tenure, some excellent, like you're just an excellent coach, right? That's very rare to find. And so I'm sure that that factors into like his love for the school. I think like he's probably happy that like sure, like he didn't get the extension last year and was a lame duck coach, but like why would they give him like in his head he knows that he didn't deserve an extension last year. Sure, you got to ask. And so like I think that's a reason why this is ending amicably. And so I'll miss that. I'll miss kind of the attention that comes with it. Like I don't think the attention was necessarily a bad thing. I'll miss like some of the high profile guys he was able to recruit in. And so like it goes back to my point. Like the Hurley era was not a failure. It was overall positive, but not by that much. And I'm going to not miss a lot of things. Like I'm not going to miss his barking at the officials. I understand why he does it. It doesn't upset me that much, but I also really believe the fact that like officials are human. And if you're just always extremely mad at them at the drop of a hat, then they're not going to give you the benefit of the doubt subconsciously even. And so I think that is something he'll have to focus on at whatever his next job is as a head coach. And look, I'm not going to miss some of the stagnant offense stuff. Now, funny enough, like a lot of that was fixed this year, or at least the players bought into it better. Now, some of that's just having a guy like Mo Odom, who's an experienced college point guard. But like that wasn't present at a lot of these past teams, or it was very fleeting. And so I'm not going to miss like that, like where even if people are wrong to say that he doesn't call plays or he doesn't design offense, like that was overblown. But there were enough times where you could make that argument and it didn't feel ridiculous. So I'm not going to miss that. Yeah, I think that kind of wraps it up. Like I'm thankful for Hurley. I'm thankful that like he provided some interest in what is a very uninteresting overall program in ASU men's basketball. It just holistically, right? And so I do think like he should be commended for that. And I think that's showing in the way like it's a very positive, like glad we're here, glad, the era was what it was, but it's also time for an end. There are very few people who are like, oh, he got screwed. No, it's fine. So now we're on to the next potential option. A few guys have been thrown out there. I'm going to start with this story from John Gambadoro. Now, I will say before I get into the story, I think the most interesting person about this story isn't someone who's mentioned. It's someone who's not mentioned in Gambo's story, but it's someone who's been mentioned in a lot of other, just in general, and that would be former ASU point guard Derek Glasser. Glasser is the Glasser, and that's Randy Bennett, who's pictured in this story, but Glasser is the former ASU point guard, played with Harden, believe also played with Harden in high school. He is currently an assistant coach at UC Santa Barbara. So he is like, yes, he has a coaching career in college basketball, but he is an assistant at a Big West school. So like he would never get hired for a Big 12 head coaching job just simply based off that, or even just based off, he used to play at ASU. However, there's a lot of reports, there's a lot of smoke out there that if he, like James Harden kind of wants him to be the head coach, and if he becomes the head coach, then James Harden will supply ASU with more money, NIL money. So I'll say this, right now, I don't want Glasser to be the head coach. He's just so inexperienced, doesn't actually have the legitimate coaching background. And it's such a leap from being an assistant coach at a lower level school to being a head coach. And so it's a risk. It's a huge risk. But if it comes out that Harden's just going to drop a bunch of money, like way more money, a really meaningful, different amount of money, like let's just say he's like, screw it all, I'm going to provide $8 million for NIL this year. Then you do it. Screw it. Just fine. Let's just get. But I don't know. You know why? Like, I root for Washington. Like, if you listen to the show, like Washington Huskies are my second team. And the constant theme with the Washington Huskies for probably like the past 20 years, maybe 15, better way to put it, is they have these talented guys that get drafted in the lottery. They're going to have it this year with Hannes Steinbach, but they stink. They have like worse results than ASU basketball even in the past 15 years. DeJounte Murray and Marquise Chris, 2 lottery picks, same team, didn't make the tournament. Jaden McDaniels, he wasn't a lottery pick, but he was a first-round pick. Didn't have the best year at Washington. He's a Washington in the NBA. He is a lottery pick level talent. Steinbach, who I've mentioned, like there's other examples. Markelle Fultz, right? I don't want ASU to be that. It's not worth it. And we kind of saw that a lot with Hurley. Now, a lot of those high-level guys didn't quite go, like Josh Christopher and Quaintance. The Quaintance a little different story because he transferred. But you get my point. Like, I don't know how much I want to be like, oh, we just need to throw money at it and that's it. Like, no, we need to have a really good coach and give him enough money to do well. So that's kind of where I land on that. I wouldn't be like upset if we hired Glasser. I would get it. But ultimately, I don't want. And look, Glasser, like he loves ASU, obviously. Like he's an ASU former player. And like, it's not like he comes in with zero coaching experience. And I'm sure he has like, if you're coaching at that level, you're connected with all sorts of different people in the high school circuit and AAU and internationally as well, I imagine. So like, I'm not worried about that, but it's more just, I don't want the expense of like actual coaching to come just because, oh, Glasser is connected with Harden and Harden will give way more money. It's like, well, like Harden will probably give a decent amount of money or some money anyway, right? But you just do it with a better coach. And is there any way we could just have Glasser as like the top assistant at ASU? Like, I don't think that's crazy. Or come and be an assistant at ASU like that. I wouldn't dislike that, So that's my Glasser opinion. Now on to Gambo's story. There's 5 coaches that he mentions, and this is written by Damon Allred, but these are Gambadoro's. These are his. According to his sources, these are the guys that are on his list. So we have St. Mary's head coach Randy Bennett. I know Randy Bennett's old. If you can get Randy Bennett, do it, and don't even that's it. Like he's from Arizona, grew up in Mesa, great. It's 2001. He's been the head coach at St. Mary's. That's absurd. 720 winning percentage. They're clearly the second best team in the WCC, but conference realignment, right? WCC is shifting. Gonzaga is leaving. And so now that conference is not quite as relevant, or I don't know, has less gravitas now that Gonzaga is going to the Pac-12. And if you're him, you're like, okay, like I can go back home and coach for the team I grew up close by, and like it's a chance to be in the Big 12. Those are things that could potentially appeal to him. I just don't like, yeah, you're going to the Big 12, but you're in like the worst or the second worst job in the Big 12. So you're climbing an uphill battle. If I were advising Randy Bennett, I would probably say like, hey, you should probably just stay at St. Mary's. But if you can get Randy Bennett, do it. Just don't even like think about it. And I do think that I don't think it's ridiculous to think that you could get him either if you're ASU. I don't think it's ridiculous because of what I mentioned about the WCC shifting, and maybe he just wants a new challenge. If he's from here, like I get all that stuff. And I do think it's definitely worth pursuing. I just ultimately don't think it's going to happen. So had to talk about Randy Bennett. Number 2, Utah State head coach Jared Calhoun. He's done a good job. Utah State has put so many coaches at higher levels. But he's done well at Youngstown State. He's branch of the Bob Huggins tree. The problem is, like, I would love to get Jared Calhoun if you can get him, but this is where kind of the reality of what ASU men's basketball is kind of rises to the surface here. It's like he's really connected to Kansas State, and Kansas State's a better basketball job than ASU. So sure, like reach out to Jared Calhoun, but I just don't think he's going to come here. Like Georgia Tech's a better job than ASU. Syracuse is a better job than ASU. Oklahoma will likely open their better job. Like the only Power 5 job that's open right now, that's a worse job than ASU, is Boston College. And I'll get to that actually in the next story I'm going to share. So, yeah, I get my point is like, you're going to be like the 5th best option probably of all the Power 5 jobs that come open. So that just has to be kept in mind with this coaching search. And one point before I switch over to keep going down the list of Gambo's candidates, I've seen Glasser compared to Kenny Dillingham. I think that is such a lazy comparison. So Kenny Dillingham when ASU hired him, he was an offensive coordinator at Oregon who had just that year, even though Oregon, I believe they went 9-3. You could see that year, it was clear that like he revived Bo Nix's college career. And it's aging even better now with Bo Nix in the NFL. He like set him on the course of being a good NFL quarterback. And that's where all of his really like quarterback, coaching and whisper, whatever, like that's where it really got set in motion. So there's that. Just the simple fact that he was a offensive coordinator at a school like that. Sure, like maybe ASU got in on him like a year early, but had ASU not hired him, he would have gone somewhere else the following offseason, Like that's just what would have happened. So that's not what Derek Glasser is. Derek Glasser is not one more year away from becoming the head coach at like, I don't know, whatever, the University of, I'm just thinking of a random, like Florida State men's basketball or California men's whatever, like your random Power 5 men's basketball program. Like he's not on that track. And Dillingham had been the offensive coordinator at Memphis. He'd been at Florida State and Auburn. Like he had so much more background than a guy like Glasser. So I just don't even think the compare. And also like ASU football and ASU basketball, I don't think they should be compared as relevant comparable programs. Like it's just ASU men's basketball is one of like a bottom 5 of all of the schools in the Power 5. Like they're probably in the bottom 5. There's a handful that are worse. That's not what ASU football is. We can debate, like I've debated, like so much of my show has been like, how good of a program is ASU football actually? Like I think there's so much room to debate there, but it's basically like in the middle of all college football programs. They're of Power 4 football programs. It's like in the middle. Maybe a little bit lower than average, maybe a little bit higher than average. However you want to, whatever categories you want to use, whatever. Like, but it's roughly in the middle. There's definitely schools we can be like, oh, like Wake Forest is anyway. Like we can look down and there's clearly schools below ASU football. That's not the case. Like ASU men's basketball, you're looking down at like Boston College, like Colorado. But Colorado right now is better because they have Tad Boyle. So it's like it's all very fluid. But that ties back into my point here is like, if you're Jared Calhoun, you're going to get better offers than ASU. And so this has to be part of the equation when we're talking about coaching candidates. Next coach, Jace Coburn at Portland State. So Portland State did not make the tournament this year. They're not going to. But they have been, he's 42. He has produced 2 of Portland State's top 3 seasons for wins in the program's last 17 years. 39-24 over the last 2 seasons. 30 years old when he took the Portland State assistant coaching job and became the head coach 5 years later. Won a regular season tournament title won a regular season title this year, which I think is very important because sure, like he's not going to make the tournament this year at Portland State, but the fact that he won a because how they do it in the lower level, like you have to win the conference tournament to get in, but he won the regular season tournament. So that shows like over a consistent basis of the year, like he proved his worth. That said, and he has Arizona connections. Like he went to ASU, and he was a head coach at McClintock High School, Corona del Sol High School. I'll be honest. Like I heard a clip of him. He was talking about how like he doesn't have heat in his specific like old car that he drives, or heat and AC. Because when he's cold, he wants to feel the cold, and when he's hot, like he wants so he's kind of like a hardo. And I'll be honest, at first, I'm kind of changing my mind now that I'm talking about it. At first, I was like, oh, this guy's corny, this guy's weird. But you know who else that describes? Joe Mazzulla, Boston Celtics head coach. That guy is a freaking weirdo, okay? And so the more I think about him, and another thing with Portland State, like they are at a resource deficit even in the Big Sky. Portland State, like they do not have even the resources of like a Montana or an Eastern Washington or what have you. Like, so, and look, I mean, getting a guy who really cares about ASU, like that's important. And he's also going to be so familiar with the recruiting scene here in the Valley because he was a head coach at McClintock. He played at Corona del Sol. Like this dude is like Arizona basketball, like, as a person, right? Like, so I'm actually much more open to Jace Coburn now that I talk about it. And he's someone you could get to. That's the other thing. Like Calhoun and the next guy I'm going to get to, you may not be able to get them, And so maybe it's a diamond in the rough type situation with Coburn. I'm going to skip the next guy. Okay. This is another guy, Josh Schertz at St. Louis. Yeah, it'd be great to get Josh Schertz. He's way, 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 way too big of a name at this point. 27 wins in his second year at St. Louis. He won 32 games at Indiana State a few years ago. 3-point shooting team. I get why they do that. I don't love it. He was a Division II guy with a great record. So, like, again, if you get Josh Schertz, that would be excellent. That would be absolutely excellent. I do not foresee Josh Schertz choosing ASU if given the option. If Syracuse wants him or Georgia Tech or whatever Power 5 school that opens wants to get him and he chooses another school or they don't want him and then he goes to ASU, then fine. Like I would be so happy if we got him, but I just don't think I put him in the Jared Calhoun bin. Like, yeah, sure. Like you should go after them, but I just don't think they're going to pick here. And now this leads me to my favorite candidate. That would be Eric Olin of New Mexico. So he has been at New Mexico for a year. He coached UC San Diego Tritons to a 30-win season. They were 3 points away from beating Michigan in last year's NCAA tournament. As it says here, he grew up with Graham Rossini in Mobile, Alabama. That is something like, that's really something to consider. And it's not like he's like would be like some bad hire. Like New Mexico is 22-9. Maybe they make the tournament, maybe they don't. Another thing to mention with New Mexico that's similar to St. Mary's is like, okay, well now the Mountain West is changing, right? Because Boise State, Fresno State, Colorado State, San Diego State, and Utah State, they're all leaving to the Pac-12. And so that leaves New Mexico in maybe a different position, right? Maybe you're in the new Mountain West League. Like maybe that's a one bid league now for basketball. And sure, like New Mexico could be by far the best job there, but it also, your wiggle room is so much lower. So I could see him bouncing, and like, he's not quite as big of a name as Schertz or Calhoun, and that is important. And he's very familiar with the area. Like Schertz is a Midwest guy. St. Louis, Indiana State, D2 Power Lincoln Memorial. I don't know where that is, probably the Midwest, but like Midwest guy. Eric Olin, like this guy has been in San Diego and Albuquerque recently. Literally like two like exact Tempe, Arizona is right in the middle of those two. So it's not going to be like some huge culture shock. And he has the tide of receding. So for me, Eric Olin is the top candidate right now. I would be very happy if we got him. There are a few other guys mentioned. So I don't have any access to the boards. But before I go into this Norlander piece, which he does a really good job kind of showing or writing, I retweeted it on the Stomp the Bus account. He does a good job kind of detailing what he's going to do next and the, his job and how he's done and that kind of tying everything's up on it. So here's a blurb. As for Hurley's successor, a quick note, there's an off-the-radar name that sources told CBS Sports is in play, Derek Glasser, the UC Santa Barbara assistant, is extremely close with ASU alum James Harden. The two were teammates in the late 2000s. Glasser was an ASU standout from 26 to 2010, and when he graduated with 551 assists, he was the school's all-time leader. I would write that differently, but having the Harden connection and the money opportunities that could come with is a major selling point for Glasser, but he has never been a head coach. If not Glasser, there's still speculation over whether St. Mary's coach Randy Bennett would finally consider it. Sources said Michigan assistant Mike Boynton is also an option. So let's look up Mike Boynton. So he talks about Hurley's tenure was better than most realized, basically saying all the things we know, like it's a bad job. But keep in mind, this program is a program that historically is one of the more anemic at the power conference level in men's college basketball. Comparing him to the previous coaches, Ned Wolk, and with the Arizona State job coming open, its prospects will likely have to fall in the middle of this year's high major vacancies. The program hasn't been flush with NIL, and it's a little brother to in-state Arizona, but the location is good and the pressure is fairly minimal, right? That's a great way to put it. Like, again, that's why you're not going to get Jared Calhoun. You're not going to get Josh Schertz. And there might be another one of these candidates you think you can get that you won't get, So it's just something to keep in mind in this coaching search. So Hurley's still going to keep coaching, and I think I could see him going to all of these jobs, South Florida, Providence, if Providence ends up coming open, and then Boston College kind of makes the most sense. Even worse than the ASU job, Boston College probably couldn't make a splash year higher than Hurley. He'd be back in the Northeast, and he wouldn't have to coach against his brother, which the Hurley brothers don't want to coach against one another. Norlander kind of advocates it here. So that would be the most interesting one. But Providence would be very interesting too. And you could also see, wouldn't be surprised if South Florida came open. And he also shoots down the idea of Hurley joining his brother at UConn. So he kind of points to the potential next school for Hurley, which I do think I could really see him at Boston College. It wouldn't be a big difference in terms of like so many of those same, negatives of ASU are at Boston College, but it's a Power 5 job. You got to take it. And it's not like he has tons of options. So let's share Mike Boynton's Wikipedia page. Thank you, Norlander. So current assistant at Michigan. He has coached all over the country. Brooklyn, played at South Carolina, Furman, Coastal Carolina. So he's in the Carolinas for about 10 years, right, as an assistant coach in mostly South Carolina. Yeah, I think those are all in South Carolina. I think Wofford. Yeah, okay, so all in South Carolina. Assistant coach at Stephen F. Austin for 3 years. Assistant coach at Oklahoma State for 2 years. Head coach at Oklahoma State. So let's look at his head coaching record. Not great, but not terrible. Ineligible for whatever reason. I don't remember what happened, but made the round of 32. You know who they had on that team was Cade Cunningham. So Mike Boynton's career at Michigan State was not superb. But I mean, this kind of looks like a Hurley type career. Like it's a lot of you have 3 20-win seasons. You get to the NIT twice. They wouldn't have made the tournament in 2020. But he had a higher high than Bobby, and he got Cade Cunningham to be at his school. So I would not be upset with Mike Boynton. In fact, I would. Yeah, he might be my number. I would put him number 3. I would go Olin number 1. I'd probably go Jace Coburn number 2, just because I do think the weirdo, hardo, just coach, like just the weird coach mentality. I think that stuff can be really effective in terms of like wins and losses. I think that stuff can be more effective than like people would like to admit. And he's had success. Like he's had success at Portland State. I mean, Bobby Hurley doesn't have a regular season conference title, and Coburn does. So, or at least not at ASU. Maybe he does at Buffalo. I don't know. But I'd be fine with him as number 2. And then I'll go with Boynton as number 3. He's seen some really high level stuff at Michigan, right? He might win the freaking tournament this year. And he's proven that he can attract Cade Cunningham, there's a chance he wins, probably not this year MVP, but he's probably going to win an MVP at some point, you know? And so that is a huge kind of feather in his cap. I was going to say feather in his back pocket, but that's not. And like, this isn't that different of a coaching tenure than Hurley had, you know? I think Hurley has the same. Let's look at his Wikipedia. Hurley's 526 winning percentage at ASU. Boynton is 522 at Oklahoma State. Now Hurley made it to the tournament more and had more 10-win seasons, but I wouldn't be that upset about hiring Mike Boynton. It would not be a splashy hire, but I think there's enough to sell there. And I mean, you're bringing in someone. He's also 44, and so that means when he started coaching, he was 35 in 2017. I mean, that's a lifetime, and he's been through it all. He knows the importance of NIL too. And that's the other thing. That's what's kind of good. The one good thing about what ASU is like, the rules of the game are clear now. We do not have the upper hand in almost any NIL dispute. And like, we're probably going to lose Masamba Diop, but at least if you're Mike Boynton, you can come in and say like, hey, if you come back here, like I put Cade Cunningham into the NBA. He was the number 1 draft pick. You have the skills to be a lottery pick, and I've produced a lottery pick before. So, and he's familiar with the Big 12 too. Like he's obviously has a lot of experience at Oklahoma State. So I would not be upset with Mike Boynton. Whatever the NBA, there's talk of like, a certain NBA assistant would consider. I don't know if it's an assistant, but someone in the NBA's circle would be open to it. Okay, I'd be okay with it. Like I'm okay with a lot of options here. Even though I don't want Derek Glasser, I would be okay with it. The only I will end my show with this. When this person's name got brought up initially, I was kind of interested, but the more I've thought about it, I do not want Greg McDermott as the next coach of ASU basketball. I think if Greg McDermott is the next coach of ASU basketball, then that means we've exhausted all of our options, because this has retirement job written all over it. Okay. And that does not work at ASU. It doesn't work in this current climate of college sports. So no, I'm sorry. Even if you're going to get an older coach, go get Randy Bennett. That's it. I don't want Greg McDermott. I'm sure he's a good coach, but there's been way too much rumors about, he wants to retire in Arizona. He likes golfing. No, you have to be someone. Give me Jace Coburn, the freaking weirdo. Okay. That's what you need. That's the level of tenacity you need for this job. So that's it. Let's hope. I'm very interested to see how this kind of comes together. That's for sure. Before I close, ASU women's basketball, they're 24-10. They did enough in the Big 12 tournament. they're very much a bubble team. ESPN's Charlie Cream has them in the last four in as the third last team in. I think it's complete. If they don't get in, I'm going to be really pissed. And I'm not Mr. Women's Basketball over here. Like I don't watch it care about it on like a regular basis. But if you 24 wins in the Big 12, and you don't really have any bad losses either, I just what are we doing? You know, like they're definitely worthy enough to be in the tournament. Okay, I'm sorry. Like that would be ridiculous if they didn't get in. So that's my thought on that. Baseball. Love beating U of A. Love that they didn't screw anything up against LMU. I still don't really change my opinion. Like what happened in the series in Dallas is still very fresh in my head. Let me put it that way. So, yeah, that'll be it. Godspeed to Bobby Hurley. I wish him well. I'll be rooting for him in his next job. It would be great if like we played him at whatever school he's at in the future. That would be awesome. But it's on to a new era. Hopefully ASU makes a good hire. This is a huge test for Graham Rossini. He made the right hire with Miller. He has done everything he's needed to do, I should say, for football. But now this is something that people will remember if you mess it up. So no pressure. But I'm not worried. I think there's enough options. And I think ASU was also kind of lucky that, like, I don't know how many Power 5 jobs are going to come open, right? I think so far it's Boston College, Kansas State, Georgia Tech, and Syracuse, Oklahoma probably as well. I think with that in mind, like there's going to be someone who's like, you know what, I'll take it. It's a Power 5 job. It's in the Big 12. And, you know, their wife would probably rather live in Phoenix than in Syracuse, New York, or Manhattan, Kansas, maybe even Boston with the weather. Now, Atlanta and Georgia Tech, like, yeah, but you get my point. Like, you can sell the location. And as Norlander mentioned in his story, which I think is important, like, the last two coaches here have gotten a long leash. I actually had to go the last three, including Rob Evans. So that's something to keep in mind as well. All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Please like and subscribe on YouTube, rate and review on your podcast platform of choice. And as always, go Sun Devils.